Hi, my name is Brianne Martin. This is my social philosophy assignment submission for Dr. Cross's Introduction to Philosophy class. Let's start with part 1. Kantian formalism is a theory that knowledge is the result of the interaction between the mind and sensation and is structured by regulative ideas called categories. Kantian formalism is synonymously known as Kantian idealism and transcendental idealism. Critical philosophy is Kant's term for his effort to assess the nature and limits of pure reason, unadulterated by experience, in order to identify the actual relationship of the mind to knowledge. Now, what exactly is principal and nominal reality? We can know reality only as it is organized by human understanding. Kant's term for the world as we experience it is phenomenal reality, and on the other hand, Kant's term for reality as it is, independent of our own perceptions, is called nominal reality. Nominal reality is commonly referred to as objective reality. Although there is only one reason or one faculty of understanding, Kant distinguishes two functions of reason, which he called theoretical reason and practical reason. Theoretical reason, including scientific reasoning, is confined to the empirical phenomenal world. Practical reason is the moral function of reason that produces religious feelings and intuitions based on knowledge of moral conduct. When we will something, we issue ourselves a kind of internal command or order, and these subjective intentions can be framed as maxims, the reason or rule according to which an act is done. Kant's moral philosophy is his attempt to distinguish morally proper maxims and motives from morally unacceptable ones. Ultimately, Kant thought that he was able to identify the supreme moral principle, the moral motive that distinguishes the good will from all other motives. Kant thought that it was crucially important to distinguish moral motives from other kind of motives. Only when I do a thing solely because it is my duty do I have goodwill. Moral obligations cannot be grounded in whims and personal taste, but must be confined to considerations of the form. My duty cannot be based on what I want to do, what I like or dislike, whether or not I care about others involved. Now let's talk about the two separate distinctions of imperatives. Kant argues that the moral quality of an act is determined by the principle to which the will consciously assents. Since they affect behavior, moral principles are always framed as commands, which he refers to by their grammatical designation as imperatives. Imperatives that tell us what to do under specific variable conditions are called hypothetical imperatives. On the other hand, according to Kant, what is needed is a categorical imperative, a command that is universally binding on all rational creatures. It is the ultimate foundation of all moral law, and this alone can guide the good will. Now, for the final part of Kantian philosophy, Kant uses the expression kingdom of ends to describe the universe of all moral beings. Human beings are more than mere objects to further this or that end. We are thinking rational beings with an innate transcendence. Now let's move on to part B. Psychological hedonism is the belief that all decisions are based on considerations of pleasure and pain because it is psychologically impossible for human beings to do otherwise. Combating this ethical hedonism is the belief that although it is possible to deliberately avoid pleasure or choose pain, it is morally wrong to do so. A major factor for both of these forms of hedonism is known what exactly the principle of utility is. That being said, the principle of utility is to always act to promote the greatest happiness for the greatest number. Now let's move on and talk about the 7 elements of hedonic calculus. The first is intensity, which is how strong is the pleasure. The second is duration, how long will the pleasure last. The third is propinquity, how soon will the pleasure occur. The fourth is certainty, how likely or unlikely is it that pleasure will occur. The fifth is fecundity, how likely is it that the proposed action will produce more pleasure. The sixth is purity, will there be any pain accompanying the action. And lastly, the 7th is extent, how many other people will be affected. John Stuart Mill could not accept Bentham's simple version of hedonism, which leveled all pleasures. He did not assign higher importance to moral, intellectual, or emotional pleasures, and his only criteria were those included in the hedonic calculus. Mill knew from personal experience that pleasures differ in kind as well as in degree, and identified with the Epicurean hedonists and separated them as higher and lower pleasures. Concerning the higher pleasures, Mill argued that there are empirical grounds for asserting that what we might call refined pleasures are preferable to and hence better than the cruder pleasures. A being of higher faculties required more to make him happy, is capable probably of more acute suffering, and certainly accessible to it at more points than one of an inferior type. On the other hand, we come across Mill's lower pleasures. He argued that there is no inconsistency between an appreciation of the superiority of the higher pleasures and succumbing to the temptation of more easily secured lesser pleasures. Mill's argument concerning altruistic utilitarianism is based on a more solid relationship between the individual and the group. Mill asserts that ultimately utilitarianism rests on the social feelings of mankind, or the desire to be in unity with our fellow creatures. Altruism is the capacity to promote the welfare of others. Altruism stands in clear contrast to egoism. According to Mill's altruistic utilitarianism, no individual's self-interest is more or less important than any other self-interest. Mill thought that no insurmountable reasons or conditions existed to prevent the emergence of a truly healthy society. He remained an optimist who believed that by applying reason and goodwill, the vast majority of human beings could live with dignity, political and moral freedom, and harmonious happiness. He believed that the wisdom of society, combined with the good sense and providence of individuals, could extinguish poverty completely, and that scientific progress, along with good physical and moral education, could alleviate the scourge of disease. Mill's optimism is based on his view of a social human nature and a deep, nearly universal sense of connectedness. Now, let's move on to part 2 and look at case study A. Case study A is evaluating Wayne, a test engineer for a special project to build a prototype of the next generation air traffic control system, who discovers a bug that could cause an aircraft to disappear from the screen and be ignored by safety tests. His boss, Deborah, tells him that they must deliver the software so that they can meet the deadline and save jobs. Wayne is against this, but ultimately signs off on the software with the assurance that the FAA's testing plan will not overload the system or put anyone in danger. The software passes all necessary tests, and the firm's success with the prototype leads to major contracts for air traffic control software, saving hundreds of jobs and allowing the company to add hundreds more. Now, Wayne faced a difficult decision between fulfilling the project requirements and ensuring the safety and reliability of the air traffic control system. On one hand, he could have refused to certify the software and risked the loss of the contract and jobs for his colleagues. On the other hand, he could have certified the software, knowing that it was not fully tested and contained a potentially dangerous bug. Wayne had a professional responsibility to ensure the safety and the quality of the software, as well as to be truthful and transparent about its capabilities and limitations. Wayne's decision to sign off on the software, knowing that it was defective and could potentially compromise other safety, is not ethical. He has compromised his integrity, he's acted dishonestly, and he has shirked his responsibilities, and potentially compromised safety. While it may have saved jobs and benefited the company in short terms, it was not a responsible or an ethical decision in the long run. Now, let's take a look at Deborah. Her decision to deliver the software with a known defect in order to meet the deadline and protect the jobs of her team is not ethical. It is the responsibility of all individuals involved in the development and delivery of a product to ensure that it is safe, reliable, and meets all required specifications. In this case, the defect could potentially result in the loss of aircraft and human lives, which is a serious safety issue. By intentionally hiding the defect from the FAA, the company is acting unprofessionally and dishonestly. This could damage the company's reputation and erode the trust of its customers, including the government agencies that rely on its products and services. While it is understandable that the company is under financial pressure and its fate is dependent on the success of the project, this does not justify compromising on safety and ethical standards. Deborah's decision to deliver the software with a known defect is not ethical and goes against the responsibility of engineers and software developers to ensure that their products are safe, reliable, and meet the appropriate specifications. Now, Deborah's decision seems to be based on utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is an ethical theory that suggests the best course of action is the one that maximizes overall happiness and minimizes suffering. Kantianism emphasizes the importance of acting out a sense of duty and following moral principles regardless of the consequences. In this case, Deborah's primary concern was to deliver the software on time to meet the contractual obligation in order to save the jobs of the employees in the aerospace division and act as an aid to the company's financial situation. She believed that the benefits of delivering the software on time outweigh the potential harm caused by the software bug. And kind of against Deborah, Wayne would fall into Kantianism. Moving on to case study B. Case study B is about Martha, a home service medical care volunteer who cared for George during his illness. George told Martha where he had stored a large sum of money just before he had died and asked her to give the money to the Society for Protection Against Alien Control of the Earth, or SPACE. However, Martha is considering using the money to support the Hunger Task Force, an organization that provides food to those in need. George had no surviving friends or relatives, and there is no written will. Excuse me. Kantianism states that actions should be guided by moral principles that are based on reason and rationality, emphasizing the inherent worth of all individuals and the importance of treating others as ends in themselves. Martha has a moral duty to carry out George's wishes and ensure that the money is donated to space. This is because George made a rational decision to entrust Martha with the money, and Martha promised to honor his wishes. According to Kantianism, Martha should not use the money to support the Hunger Task Force, but instead fulfill George's wishes and donate the money to space. Her decision to donate the money to the local Hunger Task Force could be seen as morally good. However, it's violating George's wishes, which he clearly expressed before passing away. Actions should be motivated by the moral duty to respect the autonomy and the dignity of others, and Martha has a duty to carry out his wishes. Case study C discusses affirmative action, which take positive actions to increase the representation of women and minorities in historically excluded areas, but controversially involves preferential selection based on race, gender, or ethnicity. Utilitarianism would say that the moral value of affirmative action would depend on whether it produces the greatest overall happiness or well-being for society as a whole. Proponents of affirmative action argue that it helps to rectify past and ongoing discrimination and promotes diversity and equal opportunities for historically disadvantaged groups. The morality of affirmative action would depend on whether the benefits of rectifying past discrimination and promoting diversity outweigh any negative effects on those who do not receive preferential treatment. Kantian philosophy holds that individuals should be treated as ends in themselves and not merely as means to an end. Therefore, Kant would likely argue that affirmative action policies that involve preferential treatment based on race, gender, or ethnicity violate the principle of treating individuals as equals, regardless of their group membership. Kant believed that justice requires treating individuals impartially and based on their own merit, rather than on any external characteristics such as race or gender. Therefore, Kant would likely be against affirmative action policies that involve preferential selections based on group membership. Excuse me. Now, lastly, let's take a look at case study D. Now, the question asks for 6 religious principles that should always be legally mandated or stipulated without any exception in the United States. Now, I may lose points for this, probably, but it's inappropriate to legally mandate or stipulate religious principles in a secular society like America. The U.S. Constitution separates church and state, and the government is not allowed to favor or promote one religion over another. Instead, the law is based on secular principles and aims to promote justice, fairness, and equality for all, and for all individuals, regardless of their religious beliefs. The principles that are legally mandated in the US are based on the Constitution and other secular laws, not on religious laws. The only thing I can really think of enforcing would be minor protection in situations of child marriages, abusive natures in the homes and churches, and even churches acting on cultic oppression or condition camp. Now, how do the laws I was supposed to list meet Kant's categorical imperative? Laws mandating or stipulating religious principles do not meet Kant's categorical imperative because they cannot be universally applied without contradiction. Kant's philosophy emphasizes treating others as ends in themselves, and laws based on religious principles may violate this principle if imposed on those who do not share the same beliefs. Thank you.